On this episode of Cosmic Sponge, Congress is on the verge of passing legislation giving whistleblower protections to government employees working on UFO black projects. Then we discuss what might be the best photo of a UFO ever taken. And for our main topic, we explore the 5 major extinction events from Earth's history and the possibility we are on the cusp of a 6th mass extinction event, while also learning that some geriatric fish are both the stuff of nightmares and the inspiration for toddler tunes.
Yeah, they get a ton of teeth, man. Lots of teeth.
Yeah, lots of teeth.
Yeah, even the grandpa fish have teeth. Those are some terrifying dentures.
Grandpa shark.
Yeah. Grandpa shark. It's terrible. Don't get started. Don't do that.
I love that song.
It's a terrible song.
Welcome to Cosmic Sponge, the podcast where we discuss weird wonders in the world. I'm Stephen Hawk.
And I'm Jimmy Coe.
In this episode, we are discussing mass extinctions, events that have occurred in Earth's deep, dark past, in which many or most of the species have suddenly disappeared from the fossil record. First, before we get into all that, Jimmy, what you been up to this week?
I'm thinking about how I'm going to stay out of jail, and things are looking good for me.
Yeah, I got a good lawyer, right?
Well, actually, I think it's because Congress is getting ready to pass a law that's going to make it possible for me to release all the information I have, government information I have on UFOs without having to go to jail.
But do you have to admit that you're part of MJ-12? Or wait a minute, is that still top secret?
Quiet. What are you doing, man?
MJ-13.
I mean, well, put on some weight, so it's more like MJ-14. 14 and a half.
Must be a big 14.
Actually, I've lost a lot of weight, so I'm on the way down.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. But yeah, so they are looking at passing a new law in the fiscal year 2023 National Defense Authorization Act. And this has been out for a little while, the discussion on this. It was brought to my attention once again with a conversation that Jeremy Corbell, our documentarian who did the documentary on Bob Lazar.
And he's released some of the videos recently that the Navy had of some strange occurrences around some of their ships. He must have an insider there somewhere.
So it does look like they're going to pass some language in this Defense Authorization Act, which allows whistleblowers, even going all the way back to the beginning of any program that might have existed, where they can come forth and explain any information they might have on this topic to members of Congress and maybe even to the news agencies and let us know what has been going on, and it mitigates any damages that they might incur as a result of this. It includes people also who work for some of the defense contracting agencies like Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and such. So it could be. Yeah.
But it only relates to anything to do with UFOs, extraterrestrials, or what? I mean, how does that work exactly? Like, I know a few years ago, probably a couple decades ago now, actually, but there was some employees, civilian employees of Area 51. And of course, at the time, the United States government would not even admit that that base existed, even though the public knew that it existed. You could go out there and see it. The base at Groom Lake. And I remember a number of years ago, there were some civilian contractors that would be flown in every day, not necessarily contractors, but civilian employees that would be flown in daily to do some kind of job there. And there were claims that there was burning toxic chemicals and things on site. And then whenever they developed health problems, they wanted to go to the government or some agency and say, hey, you know, when I inhaled all those toxic fumes, now I have, you know, mesothelioma or something going on. And they couldn't do anything because the government wouldn't admit that that base actually existed. All right. So they couldn't say, this is where it happened. This is where I contracted these breathing problems or whatever.
This is where I slept on the wet floor.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, I mean, I'm just curious how far reaching this this thing is.
Well, the final language isn't in yet. At least that's my understanding. But it is going to have some protections, monetary protections. So any lost wages will be covered to some degree. I don't know what the cap on that's going to be. Limitations on what kind of retributions companies can bring on employees that share any secrets that may fall underneath this protection, whistleblower protection language. So,
I mean, I like it. I like transparency. I like to know what our government's up to. Just like with Edward Snowden, a lot of people think he's a traitor. A lot of people think he's a hero for releasing all of the secret documents. I mean, really brought to light what the NSA does, and it's spy on people in their conversations, in their private lives, which the government always said they didn't do. And he felt like the public should know that, yeah, we do. Not only do we spy on other nations, we spy on our own citizens. That brought that to light. So, of course, I guess he'll never be able to return to the United States unless somebody pardons him down the road. But I doubt that'll ever happen, because he did release secret stuff unauthorized. But, like I said, traitor, hero, whatever.
Yeah,
but
I don't know.
I do like to know what the government's up to. I think we have a right to know.
Yeah, even more so since we found out last episode that they were spending a ton of money making, cyborg cats. So,
well, we know how well that worked out.
Yeah, I mean, it's $20 million I could have used.
And 20 years working with psychics to spy on the Soviet Union, a 20-year program.
Or longer.
Or it could still be going on. We don't know.
It'll be going on.
I'm not clairvoyant, so,
I am.
can't tell you.
I see the program still going on near a body of water. In an open field. You can see trees in the distance.
I see trees around.
I see trees around.
All right, man.
So what do you got?
But that is interesting. It will be really cool to see what comes of that program. I'm looking forward to some of these whistleblowers coming forward, and hopefully some interesting stories may come to light because of it.
Yeah, I'm hoping. I'm not that hopeful that it's you were actually going to get a lot of people come out of the woodwork, but maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many stories. That film footage that Gordon Cooper, the astronaut, said years ago that he was out there with the film crew and this UFO landed at an air base, and they filmed the whole thing, and then it took off, and they had to send the film to Washington, and that was it. Some courier come and picked it up, and it disappeared. So I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, or we might just find out that Gordon Cooper also hit the ayahuasca pipe. I don't know.
I don't know, man.
We just don't know.
He seemed pretty convincing to me. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, when he's interviewed on the Phenomena, I mean, he was a pretty old guy back then, but I mean, there's things he'd talked about before.
Yeah.
So,
he definitely a believer.
So I found a cool story. There was what many people consider the very best UFO photo ever, taken in the UK about 30 years ago. Jimmy, I want you to go to Facebook and check this out. So I just posted this story.
Going to Facebook to check this out. I probably should just keep this loaded up for our episodes. What is that?
Yeah, this is either the Calvine or the Calvine.
I've heard it both ways.
This is showing what. Well, let's find the beginning of the story. That is an amazing photograph.
It is.
So this photograph shows what seems to be a huge angular object, and there appears to be a jet aircraft, a Harrier, behind it. It was taken around 9 p.m. on August 4th, 1990, by two hikers on a hillside near Calvine, just off the A9, some 35 miles northwest of Perth in Scotland. The men, whose identities remain unknown to this day, claim they watched the metallic object hovering with a low hum for about 10 minutes while fighter jets made passes in the distance. As they watched the scene, the object, which they estimate to be up to 100 feet long, it then shot off at high speed straight up into the sky. They snapped 6 photographs of this craft with fighter plane in the background. The photos were then given to Scotland's Daily Record newspaper, who in turn passed them to the Ministry of Defense. For unknown reasons, the story was never published and the photos vanished And so began the modern myth of the Calvine photograph, with images never being seen in public until now. Dr. Clark, who worked as a curator for the Ministry of Defense UFO Files project at the National Archives and is an associate professor from Sheffield Hallam University, managed to track down the photo by seeking out former RAF press officer Craig Lindsay. Lindsay had kept a copy of the original photograph as he was the go-between between the press and the Ministry of Defense when the original story was probed in 1990. He had the original envelope sent by the Daily Record. Inside was one of the original photographs. He then agreed to hand the photo over to Dr. Clark and Vinnie Adams from the campaign group UAP Media UK, and it has now been filed in the archives of Sheffield Hallam University. So yeah, apparently these couple of people who wish to remain anonymous took some of these photographs, gave it to a newspaper who passed it on to the Ministry of Defense, and presumably the Ministry of Defense did not want this to be released. And I can tell you it's a pretty extraordinary looking photograph. Of course, we're living in the days of possible hoaxes. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, it says here also, that they're not supposed to release certain information, details about the case until 2076. And that was done to protect the names and addresses of those people on file, presumably the two hitchhikers who took the picture.
You mean hikers?
Hitchhikers. I said hitchhikers. I'm sorry. I watched The Hitcher recently. Record Hauer, ripping a guy in two. Spoilers! Actually, it wasn't a guy, it was a girl.
Alien hitchhikers.
Hitchhikers.
I think it's a pretty amazing looking photograph. So, listeners, I urge you to, head over to Facebook. Just look for Cosmic Sponge on Facebook, and you can check it out for yourself. It's almost it certainly could be a hoax. There's no doubt about it, but it looks pretty good. Looks pretty amazing. If it's real, it's very amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's much clearer than I would have expected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially having the jet in the background just adds some authenticity to it, I think.
And it was
amazing.
Taken in 1990, and I can tell you I'm not familiar with any aerial craft, not even a balloon or a hot air balloon or some kind of Zeppelin or something like that is shaped like this. I mean, maybe it's like a really, 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 really big kite.
Yeah, I was going to say they could have used photographic technique known as forced perception or even a double exposure to produce this, because the sky's all gray. And I mean, it's definitely a photograph of a fighter in motion. One would assume it's what it looks like. But one thing is that always gives me pause on these, or whenever the original photographers do not wish to be identified. And on one hand, I'm thinking, okay, here's a couple guys that do not want to be turned into, a media. They don't want to be, they don't want to be bothered by the media and by UFO investigators. And it's like, hey, here's this amazing thing we took a picture of. Here's the story, but I don't want to be identified. I respect that. But on the other hand, it's very common that whenever a very good-looking photograph or video comes out, that the people remain anonymous because they hoaxed it. That's happened. Like, for instance, do you remember the crop circle video that was out for a while?
Oh, yeah, where it actually showed a crop circle being formed by lights flying around in a circle, yeah.
Yeah, like the little orbs were going around creating everything. And it turned out to be a hoax, a really good hoax, too. And but then finally the guy come forward and admitted that he did it, and showed how he did it. Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, it's pretty amazing. If it's real, it's very amazing. So listeners, once again, urge you to go to Facebook, look for Cosmic Sponge. If you do, check it out. We have a Facebook group called Cosmic Sponge Theorists, and jump on there and subscribe to it. And every time Jimmy or I post stories like this, you can be the first to see it in your feed. Oh, by the way, I caught up on your Instagrams the other day. Pretty funny.
Yeah.
Pretty funny.
Yeah, they're...
So that's... Yeah. And by the way, it's not Magic Eyes. The song's actually Private Eyes.
That's right. We were talking about that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway.
Can't get them
just
all
in
right.
case anyone's seen the Instagram. And you know what? Just because... Go check out the Instagram. It'll make sense to you.
Exactly.
Yeah, so get on Instagram, check out, I guess it's just Cosmic Sponge, All right. Anything else on?
No, I think I don't know. I just click on it, man.
I just click on it and it goes.
It's Instagram.com probably /Cosmic Sponge Podcast.
Yeah. Well, anyway, just go to Instagram and search for Cosmic Sponge. It'll come up. If you find something that has a makeup brush to apply, like, eyeliner or something, that's not the Cosmic Sponge that we're talking about.
It is Instagram.com /Cosmic Sponge Podcast.
There we go.
Yeah.
So, yeah, check out Jimmy's Instagrams. They're pretty funny. And while you're at it, go to our webpage, cosmicsponge.com. There you can check out the web store. You can also find links to each and every one of our previous episodes. And there's ways to support the show there. If there's one called Buy Me a Coffee, it's a little coffee cup icon. Click on that and do a one-time donation. Or if you'd like to support the show on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, there's a link right beside the Buy Me a Coffee. If you click on that, that will take you to Patreon. If you join one of those levels, there's 3 different levels there, you'll gain access to another show that we do called Weird Wonders that we do exclusively for our Patreon supporters. All right, man, on to tonight's show. So as we said at the beginning, we're going to be looking into mass extinctions. And without any further explanation, Jimmy, I know you've done a little legwork on this one.
That was a long pause.
I was waiting for you to do something like that.
What? Where are we? What's going on? I don't know.
Yeah.
And we begin.
How about getting us started on mass extinctions? What do you say?
Okay, let's do that. The Permian was especially bad unless you were a mushroom. This observation was tweeted out by none other than Elon Musk just before he scarfed down a burger while also finishing a rocket schematic, torquing a bolt on a Tesla prototype, winning a game of chess, and starting 2 other companies. One that would produce a helmet allowing communication with dolphins, and the other that would capture cow farts at the source. A valiant effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, thus allowing the burgers to keep on flowing. Elon's reference to the Permian was just to one of 5 mass extinction events from our planet's history. It was the one that produced the mushroom products that helped launch each and every one of his businesses. These extinction events were responsible for setting back the evolutionary progress, often leaving behind little more than small, resilient critters like shrews and goldfish. And now, scientists believe we are at the precipice of a 6th mass extinction event caused in large part by a dramatic shift in our climate. Perhaps looking to our past can help us navigate the future with more favorable outcomes for mankind. So tonight, we are going to look at all 5 of the previous mass extinction events and their suspected causes. Then we're going to entertain the most popular extinction-level events in our potential future, in an effort to both search for ways to avoid them and to finally get to our disaster movie screenplay roughly titled, Hey, what does this button do? Off the ground and into production.
It usually sounds like something that happens whenever we technical problem with the podcast. Like not record audio or something, right?
That's never happened.
Yeah, one episode we had to come back the next day and record the whole thing over after we'd spent like an hour and a half or 2 hours recording.
And still sound enthused and involved.
Yeah. I'm not going to tell you which one it was.
Not at all. I think actually we tell them on that
Hopefully
episode.
It's not this one.
Things are looking good.
Yeah, it made Jimmy paranoid. He started looking up at his
Hooked up like a TV.
up at his monitor.
A monitor that's more like a big LCD.
Yeah. Mass extinctions are whenever there's an event that happens on planet Earth. I think most listeners are probably familiar with the theory that a large asteroid or meteor hit the Earth 66.5 million years ago that spelled the doom of the dinosaurs, that was the end of the dinosaurs and killed most life on Earth. During these mass extinction events, most of the species are wiped out, and it'll leave these niches open so that new life can evolve and fill those niches in the environment. There's more than just 5 extinction events. In fact, there's quite a few. Some scientists say as many as 20 extinction events since life began on this planet. What is believed, at least multicellular life, which is approximately 540, 550 million years ago. Now, bacterial life, single-celled life existed on this planet long before that. Once we started seeing animals and plants and this diversification of life began in what's known as the Cambrian period, approximately 540, 550 million years ago. There's 5 mass extinctions that we want to focus on, and it's commonly referred to as the Big Five. Almost all life was wiped out on the planet.
Yeah, the first one was, and I'm not doing a second take on this at all, Ordovician Silurian extinction event. A little fact here on Silurians. Do you know what Silurians are?
Silurian. Is that like Sleestak from Land of the Lost?
Almost. Very, very, very close. Silurians are the lizard people in Doctor Who. When I was doing my research, I looked it up and I said, hey, that looks like the lizard person from Doctor Who.
And when I saw that word, I thought of the Silmarillion, which is supposed to be the precursor in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Silmarillion, isn't that what it's called?
It is, yeah. It's about the Cimarrols, which are some magic orbs or something that.
Yeah, I never read that one.
Yeah, well, that's because it reads like a bad history book.
Please, I started it, but
please,
I was in high school. So
anybody who wants to slam me for that, all you Tolkien nerds out there, send your email to
first contact at cosmicsponge.com.
I was going to tell him to send it to somebody else.
Jimmy.
No.
Attention, Jimmy Coe.
I'm going to get some fan mail.
450 to 440 million years ago.
Right.
2 events that killed off what they believe to be about 85% of all species, ranked by many scientists as the second largest of the 5 major extinctions in Earth's history in terms of percentage of species that became extinct.
But I mean, there wasn't that much, right? There was like 3 different kinds of trilobites and maybe a slug or 2. I mean, there wasn't. I mean, you kill off 4 of them, you're already there.
The trilobites didn't actually become extinct until, I think, the late Denovian extinction. Or actually the Permian Triassic. I think the trilobite, which is interesting you said that because I was going to come to this later in the show, but since you mentioned it, what is this, Jimmy?
Looks like a turd.
Come on, man.
Oh, is that like a fossilized trilobite?
Yeah.
Nice.
It is. It's a fossil.
Is it real or is it like a
trilobite.
casting of one?
No, it's real.
Nice.
Absolutely.
That's a pretty good size one.
Yeah.
Yeah. You dig that up in your backyard?
No, I did not. But you can find these pretty close to where I live because in West Virginia, this part of it was underwater at some point very, very long ago. We don't have dinosaur fossils here.
It was a shallow sea.
That you can,
yeah,
the fossils you can find here are much, much older, like around 350 million years ago. So our mountains, the Appalachian Mountains, were formed plate tectonics long ago whenever North America combined with Africa is what caused that about 300 million years ago, I think. So we have old mountains, real old.
Yeah, they used to be like the Rockies. They've just worn down.
That's right, yeah.
So I was looking here at this first one, the Ordovician Silurian extinction that we're talking about now. I was looking at it, and there are a couple of theories about what may have happened. One of them is that there was a period of oxygen depletion, and that caused marine life just to be wiped out. And I suspect that's the majority of life was marine life at that point in time.
That's right. History. Yeah, in the Cambrian.
And the other suggestion was a gamma ray burst from a supernova that ripped an enormous hole in the ozone layer, allowing deadly ultraviolet radiation to kill the life below. And then there's another theory that maybe volcanism was the cause. You have just a lot of active volcanoes going off over an extended period. Now, these extinction events aren't something that happened like overnight, right? Mm-hmm. It's over a significant period of time. Is it really a measurement, not necessarily of how many go extinct, but rather the relationship between how many new species propagate versus how many species go extinct within some set amount of time, right?
Right. Like, for instance, you'll see, especially in fossils this old, you'll see the geological layers. You can date these using zircon crystals, rocks very, very old. Not a lot of really, really old rocks like this all over the planet. but they can date them because the zircon crystals contain a small amount of radioactive material, and they know the rate at which they decay. So by measuring the amount of decayed material within these zircon crystals, they can get a good estimate of how old a particular rock is. They will see this particular geological layer, and below it will be certain types of species of at this time, marine life is what was seen, and then above that layer they'll see less or none of these species. So that period of time can last maybe 1,000,000 years or 10,000 years or 20,000 years. Just depends on the event. But some major changes, it would be changes that happen in the environment so quickly that most life could not adapt to it. So if the changes were slow, most life would be able to adapt to the new conditions, or they would evolve into some other kind of life. But an extinction event is where conditions on the planet changed rapidly enough that most animals could not adapt to it.
Which is why the little tiny ones that could burrow, or if their marine life dive deep, they might be able to survive.
Yeah, recently there's been some, they believe now that probably it was volcanic activity. There's been a deposition of volcanic ash that's been found along those layers, that geological layers during this event that would have ejected a lot of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which would have in turn caused global warming. Probably could have very well led to glaciation, global warming, and then of course more carbon dioxide could lead to sort of a volcanic winter. Could have been a cause of it, and just a reduction of oxygen in the oceans. Most likely what were the causes, but nobody knows 100%. It was a very, very long time ago, 450 million years ago. And I think it's real easy to think, when we think about life on this planet, we think about, most people realize, there was ancient life, but I think most people's minds go straight back to the dinosaurs, and you think of that era. But that's a pretty recent era in a sense. We're talking dinosaurs ended about 66 million years ago. These events happened 450 million years ago. There was life on Earth for a long time before the dinosaurs came along. But the dinosaur era was a very long era. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, but in this first thing, it's pretty boring because none of them could eat you. They didn't have any of these things in Land of the Lost.
Right. The next mass extinction, they believe, happened between 375 million to 360 million years ago, the late Denovian extinction. This would have been right before the Carboniferous period. This time, I think they believe 70% of all species perished.
75%?
Yeah, well, the source I have says 70s.
The source I said is very cynical. And looks like it might be put out by some emo or maybe some goth kids. So 75%.
Right. Now, this is an interesting one in that this extinction event lasted perhaps as long as 20 million years. There is evidence of a series of extinction pulses, meaning that this extinction event happened and then life rebounded for a while and then life started to drop back down again. And the Carboniferous period, I think, is very interesting. Again, this is long before the age of the dinosaurs, but the Carboniferous period the Earth was very warm and we had dense vegetation. This is also a time whenever life left the oceans, it was on land. It was an era of insects. They believed so much oxygen was in the atmosphere that insects could grow to these enormous lengths. Like you could have 5-foot-long dragonflies, right? They have found fossilized dragonflies literally 5 feet long.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Yeah, they had centipedes that were 6 feet long because insects breathe basically through their exoskeletons.
Right.
The extra oxygen allowed them to grow to these enormous sizes. Now, when we think of fossil fuels like burning oil or coal, I know a lot of people, whenever we call them fossil fuels, your mind immediately goes to dinosaurs, right? You think putting a brontosaurus in your tank. But really, most of these fossil fuels were formed from the remains of the Carboniferous period. They were very jungly type environments that had all this peat, like in the bottom of the jungle, all this decaying matter that just kept getting piled on and piled on and piled on. And that's eventually, of course, sank into the earth and it was pressed down, and all of that carbon, those massive layers of carbon, is what became our fossil fuels that we burn today.
Wow. So mostly insects on the land still. Well, this is creeping me out.
Plant life, mostly.
Plant life and these big-ass insects. Yeah, that's going to creep me out a little bit. Dreams aren't going to be fun tonight. I see that this is referred to as the age of fish. And they have some really creepy-looking fish here. My dog is going crazy. I don't know what she's going on about. But they have some really creepy-looking fish here. And one's called the Dunkleostus. And it looks terrifying. It looks way more terrifying than any other critter I've ever seen.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's so weird to see some of the drawings and artist renditions of life at that era.
Yeah, terrifying.
Just so different from life today.
Yeah, they get a ton of teeth, man. Lots of teeth.
Yeah, lots of teeth.
Yeah, even the grandpa fish have teeth. Those are some terrifying dentures.
Grandpa shark.
Yeah. Grandpa shark. It's terrible. Don't get started. Don't do that.
I love that song.
It's a terrible song. So going up next, we have the Permian Triassic extinction. That's 253 million years ago, approximately, where 96% of marine life, oh my gosh, and 70% of terrestrial life went bye-bye.
Yeah, this one is known as the Great Dying. This was the worst extinction event that we know of on the planet. Nearly all life, at least multicellular organisms, disappeared, particularly, as Jimmy had just pointed out, in marine life. Yeah, I had my little fossil. I was waiting for this because this little trilobite and his relatives, I know this is an audio-only format, but those existed from the early Cambrian period, about 521 million years ago, existed up into the Permian until about 252 million years ago. This class of animal was one of the most successful animals to exist. That's why we have so many fossils of them everywhere. So they lasted about 270 million years with over 20,000 species that have been discovered so far. But that event, this great dying, is what spelled the doom of the trilobite. It was also one of the species that went extinct.
Yeah. It said it decimated reptiles, insects, amphibians that roamed on the land, and just about everything that was in the water. And they attribute this to one of two things. Either a very large and hungry lizard named Big Al, who apparently went around killing everything and eating everything he saw, or volcanism. Now, most scientists are leaning really heavily toward the volcanism thing. But right. Big Al's going to catch on. I'm going to keep going to the conferences until I convince them that Big Al's the reason most of these guys died. It was Big Al. Very hungry lizard.
At this time, plate tectonics had brought all of the continents together, and there was one supercontinent. I mean, every continent on the planet, except for, I think, maybe a small chunk of southern China, which was on the other side of the world at that time. Mm-hmm. But all of the continents existed in one giant continent known as Pangea, is what scientists have named it in modern times. It's believed that whenever it began to break apart, that's what caused a lot of this volcanism, the tectonic pressures. There was a massive volcanic eruption in what is today known as Siberia. And the remnants of that now is called the Siberian Traps. And they believe that these volcanoes, massive volcanoes, not just, a localized event, but these massive volcanism in that area maybe erupted for millions of years. It just kept pouring out toxic gases into the atmosphere, causing cooling of the planet, completely disrupted the environment, where almost all life perished.
Corals were a group of marine life that was among the worst affected, and it took over 14 million years for the ocean reefs to rebuild to their former glory. That's some of what we're seeing right now. We're seeing a lot of coral reefs go belly up.
For the reemergence of vertebrate life after this event, took about 30 million years. 30 million years for higher life forms to reemerge after this extinction event.
How many election cycles would that be? That's a heck of a lot of presidents.
I don't think there's any presidents. I mean, I know some are considered spineless, but I think generally a politician is a vertebrate.
I don't know. We don't know everything. They could have their own little, super species.
Yeah, but I think scientists are pretty much in agreement that this mass volcanism most likely led to this great dying. And when I think about these, most listeners are probably aware of that Yellowstone Park in Wyoming, National Park, is a supervolcano.
Yeah.
A gigantic hotspot underneath that whole park. It would be an event similar to that. I mean, think about how that would affect life on this planet now if this massive supervolcano erupted. Life would end as we know it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I definitely have to cancel my park plans. I don't think the landscape would be quite the same.
Right. I mean, of course, there's no reason worrying about it because...
Well, have you seen NASA has a plan to vent the caldera under there that's bubbling?
I've heard of different scenarios of how to relieve the pressure of volcanoes, but I don't know. I think the power of the earth, we're talking magma pouring up from the core of the earth to a thin spot in the crust. I mean, as enormous as the power we have with thermonuclear weapons, pale in comparison to the real power, what the earth is, what can happen on the earth based on what we know in the geological record, based on events like this.
I don't know.
I mean, it just pales in comparison to the natural forces of this planet.
You did not see the science fair that I went to where the sixth grader had a little truck with a drill bit on top of it and showing this long tunnel that it would drill through to get to the caldera to have this angled thing to sort of help vent out the stuff so that it wouldn't build up. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
sounds like a plan.
He got second place. You're going to poo-poo on this kid's dreams. Come on.
What got first place? Peter Brady's volcano?
Nah, something with cereal
lava.
and preservatives. I don't know. It wasn't anywhere near as interesting.
Wasn't nearly as cool as volcano.
Yeah. What are you going to do? They can't all be winners. And even the ones that are winners can't be winners. So what's up next?
Let's move on to the Triassic-Jurassic extinction event.
Right. 201 million years ago. Is this where the dinosaurs come into our story? Because that's what I've been waiting for.
Now, when we say the Triassic-Jurassic extinction event, that's because it's the end of the Triassic era, the beginning of the Jurassic era. And, of course, that is where we see the beginning of dinosaurs. Before this extinction event, creatures, reptiles, known as archosaurs, which are creatures related to today's modern crocodiles and alligators. The fossil record shows that the planet was dominated by relatives of today's crocodilia.
I would not have liked that time period at all. That's one of the animals that terrify me the most. Crocodiles.
Yeah. So, and that's on land, of course. So, those were what was, and I mean, of course, they look different than they do today. I mean, obviously, but the species related to today's modern crocodiles.
Yeah. Were they much
what
bigger?
Was dominating the earth.
Were they like real big? Like much bigger than today's alligators and crocodiles, or were they about the same size, or were they tiny, working on
different sizes? They weren't tiny. I know there was one real predominant species, Archosauromorpha.
They say large prehistoric crocodiles and some flying pterosaurs.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That sounds like a horrific time to be alive.
Right. That was these reptiles, what dominated the planet at that time on land. Some theories suggest that if you just look at the statistical analysis of the marine losses, suggests that there was more or less a decrease in diversity than a decrease in speciation, meaning that it wasn't that species died off, it just species became less diverse.
So evolution sort of stalled?
Yeah. And again, that's just based on looking at it, the number of species that are known to have existed then. But There are some things that point to a more catastrophic event that happened on the Earth that led to the extinction. For instance, as you were saying earlier, coral reefs obviously are a good, and we have lots of fossilized coral reefs to study. It looks like there was a pronounced collapse of coral reefs that indicate there was some type of ecological catastrophe that occurred during this period. They believe there could have been a sea level change. And there's even been theories that have proposed an asteroid strike similar to the one that we're going to be talking about next. There was also what we see another period of pronounced volcanic eruptions.
Yeah, I was looking into this one a little bit, because initially I thought this was the one where the dinosaurs got blown into outer space, but no. This is the one where you had volcanoes release enormous amounts of carbon dioxide, which in turn drove climate change. And so global temperatures increased, ice melted, sea levels rose and acidified, and as a result, many of the marine and land species became extinct. And they think there's also a possibility, as an alternative theory, the rising carbon dioxide levels released trapped methane from permafrost, which would have resulted in a similar series of events. So whatever the trigger was, they're pretty sure this story that they're building up for this extinction level event, the end phase was pretty much set, maybe not in stone, but as much as they could be sure about something that far back in time with the information they're given, that it was a result of climate change.
Kind of a slow decline, in other words, until the environment collapsed, reached a tipping point where it couldn't recover.
Yeah.
I find it very intriguing that we're seeing another extinction event tied to probable or possible volcanic activity.
Yeah.
Every so often, the Earth spews out all this stuff and kills everything off. It just becomes a cataclysm that's uncontrollable.
Yeah, just about every one of these, in some way, up to this point at least, is directly tied to huge swings in the climate, where, the species can't adapt that quickly to respond to the changes in the environment. So they just kick off the mortal coil, and the ones who are more adaptable survive. So,
yeah.
And we're probably the most adaptable species to ever, at least larger vertebrates, to ever live on the planet. So,
and raccoons.
Freaking raccoons.
They're pretty damn adaptable, too.
So those little hands and those bandit faces. They can hide at night if they close their eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean...
I know it's true. They hide when they close their eyes.
But what you were saying earlier, before I mentioned raccoons...
Yeah.
I mean, that's absolutely true. Human beings are the most adaptable creatures on the face of the planet because, ruling out microlife and bacteria and things like that. If the climate suddenly changed, we're not going to suddenly start sprouting more fur and hair. If our environment changes, we're going to build heaters or we're going to make coats. I mean, we will adapt to it using ingenuity over waiting for natural mutations to occur in our gene pool.
Yeah.
To survive.
Yeah, so we are getting past the Jurassic into the one I've been excited to go about all night because this is the one I grew up learning about. I actually play acted this out as a kid. For a while, I was fascinated with dinosaurs like most kids are, and I would act this one out with you can still get these. I mean, I'm sure kids still do. Kids are always kids thing. I don't care what the generation is. If you package in a bunch of hard plastic dinosaurs into a big old plastic bag where you get like 500 of them for 40 cents or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's a great gift. And I would take them out and I would put them just balance them up on this half inflated soccer ball we had and pretend the soccer ball was planet Earth. And then I would just like poof in the air, like push it up in the air, have all the dinosaurs fly off. Because in my mind as a kid, when that asteroid hit, all the dinosaurs got blown in outer space.
Oh, yeah.
Not all of them, but most of them.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
And they all died instantaneously. And until I did, I hate to say it, but until I did this research, I did not realize it wasn't like an instantaneous, or I figured it's like a couple of weeks, all the dinosaurs died off. Not so.
Yeah, so this is probably the best known, the most understood, although there's still some controversy about this event. It's known as the Cretaceous Paleogene, but it's also known as the Cretaceous Creationary event, or the KT extinction. Now, if you've watched some documentaries about mass extinctions or the dinosaurs, you know, that's often when they look at the geological record, you can see this layer that looks different than all the rest. They call that the KT boundary. And when you look at those different layers of sediment and all the layers below that KT boundary, you find dinosaur fossils. Everything above, no dinosaur fossils, right? So they know that something happened during that KT boundary and the geological record, that dinosaurs disappeared rather suddenly. Now, this has been known long before any of the theories about what caused this came about. This is the most recent extinction event.
You know, they call it, what is it? They have another word. Oh, the day the dinosaurs died, because it was a fast die-off. They're saying in months.
Yeah.
A huge number would have died after that impact.
It is currently believed that a gigantic meteor crashed into the Earth, and that is what led to this extinction event.
It was 8 miles wide, plunged to Earth at about 45,000 miles per hour, or if you're everywhere else in the world, that's 72,000 kilometers per hour. And it punched a hole that was 110 miles or 180 kilometers wide and 12 miles or 19 kilometers deep, called the Chicxulub crater.
Now, it believes that this asteroid hit right off the Yucatan Peninsula, and the remains of this crater can be found today. Most of it is under the ocean in the Gulf of Mexico, but a little bit of it is still on land as well. So scientists have went there and done some excavations. Another thing that led scientists to believe this, in fact, the first paper that originally proposed that an asteroid event had killed off the dinosaurs was in 1980, published by a team of scientists led by Luis Alvarez and his son Walter. One thing that led to this proposal that an asteroid killed off the dinosaurs was the presence of iridium in the geologic record right at the KT boundary, unusual levels of iridium that would have been loose in the atmosphere. Iridium is often found on asteroids and meteors that come to Earth today that crash through the atmosphere. That is the first clues that an asteroid indeed killed off the dinosaurs. Of course, they were looking for the smoking gun, and as Jimmy had said, they found this huge Chicxulub crater, this massive impact crater that once they studied it, realized that yes, this was an asteroid impact, a large asteroid impact that coincided with the extinction event that killed off the dinosaurs.
It says that, you know, the majority of the species died off within months after that initial impact. But not all the dinosaurs died instantly. You had this cloud of dust that went up, and it may have taken as long as 200,000 years for all of the larger dinosaurs to die off, and it would have happened in a series of events after the initial die-off, because you're going to have some from the blast, you know, that, you know, in the vicinity. And then you're going to have an elevation in temperatures, and then you're going to have a decrease in temperatures because you're going to have essentially the similar thing as a nuclear winter. And then that's going to cause plants to die off or not grow back as quickly, which then in turn causes the herbivores to die off, which then in turn causes the meat eaters to die off. So probably the larger ones did die off in those first couple of months, but, you know, even the medium-sized ones probably took, or even the smaller ones, you know, took as long as 200,000 years, they're thinking.
Non-avian dinosaurs, we know now birds are descended from dinosaurs, or obviously survived. Some mammals, lizards, insects.
Nessie.
Right. Well, that's the thing. They said that, you know, in marine life that the plesiosaurs died out. And as soon as I read that, I thought, well, at least a few lived, right?
Mm-hmm.
The freshwater version. At least one's still here.
Yeah, the mini-me's. They made it.
Right. You know, but anyway, regardless of what the Loch Ness Monster may or may not be, most life did perish, larger life, and particularly the dinosaurs. But sharks survived, mollusks, In the end, it's estimated that more than 75% of all species on Earth vanished. And of course, that's what left the door open to our ancestors.
The mighty shrew.
You could easily say I wouldn't be the man I am today without this extinction event.
Yay, meteors.
Mammals began to diversify during the Paleocene era. We saw some horses, whales, bats, primates, all of these different species to begin to fill these niches that were left behind after the dying off of the dinosaurs.
Now, here's the question. We have presumably, many scientists believe we're headed towards a sixth mass extinction event. We're pretty adaptable. You think we're going to make it?
Yeah, probably. Well, I don't know. It just depends. I mean, yes, human beings are adaptable, but if we have some type of catastrophic environmental collapse, such as we saw in some of the other extinction events, Yellowstone erupts, and we have a super volcano event that spews all of this ash into the atmosphere, and the food production goes to 1% or 2% of what it is, then that will be a great dying all over. I mean, if plants can't produce food, then we all perish, right?
I'm going to start stocking up.
Get your freeze-dried food out there into the bunker.
Yeah. Yes.
There are scientists today, they call it the Holocene extinction event. They say that extinctions have occurred over 1,000 times in the background extinction rate since 1900, and the rate is increasing. It's due to human activity, driven by population growth and the overconsumption of the Earth's natural resources. The Global Biodiversity Assessment asserts that out of the estimated 8 million species, that 1 million plant and animal species are currently threatened with extinction. In late 2021, the WWF, World Wildlife Federation, suggested that over 1 million species could go extinct within a decade in the largest mass extinction event since the end of the dinosaur age.
In a decade?
In a decade.
Now, how far out are they expecting that to happen? Are they just saying, yeah, it could happen?
Well, there are a lot of species under threat. And I mean, not just large species, small. I mean, the monarch butterfly is under threat of extinction right now. It's all over.
The brown-nosed bat, the one that's always puckering up to the teacher. That one's under threat.
But yeah, I remember a few years ago, I kind of did this thing on my own just to look into all the species that have gone extinct. And what started me down that path, and I think I talked about this on the podcast before, we did an episode on the thylacine, or the Tasmanian tiger, because people are currently having sightings in Australia and New Zealand. They claim they've seen this creature that we know died. The last one died in a zoo in 1936, I think, and the last one was killed in the wild in something like 1933. But I saw something on that. I watched a movie or documentary about the thylacine a few years ago. So I kind of went down this path, this rabbit hole, as Jimmy and I like to call it, of just looking into all the species that have gone extinct that we know about, that really there's hundreds, there's thousands. And I mean larger animals that have existed even in 1900 that are gone. The passenger pigeon's gone. They said at one time that the passenger pigeons in the United States would fly over, and it might take an hour for a flock of these millions of birds to fly over. It would darken the sun.
Well, I know for a fact a lot of these extinctions are due in large part, and it's their own fault, because those animals taste delicious.
Well, see, that's where you're wrong. If an animal tastes delicious, we're going to make sure it survives, right? I mean,
we will
cows,
now. We've
cows will never go away.
They might. You see all that stuff where they're making the farmers get rid of their cows. They can only have a certain number of them over in the Netherlands.
Oh,
yeah. They pass them along. Why? Because the cows contribute significantly to
the cow poop.
And burping is supposed to
production of methane. Yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah. So Netherlands doing their part. They're cutting their food supply short so that they can stop global warming. They'd rather you starve to death.
Well, of course, environmentalists would prefer just The people just disappear altogether.
There's too many people.
At least the environment would be safe.
It's like that comedian Bill Burr says, there's too many of you. Some of you got to go. I've got a great plan. We're going to just start sinking cruise ships.
All right, man. Well, you got anything else you wanted to add? Oh, I had one other thing here I wanted to add. The top 10 weirdest dinosaur extinction ideas.
Ooh, I love these kinds of things. Hit me.
So, egg eating. George Wineland, an early 20th century paleontologist, argued that the dinosaurs ate themselves into extinction. This is similar to what you're talking about.
Yeah. They were delicious.
The ancestors of the fearsome Tyrannosaurus probably got their first impulse toward giantism on a diet of sauropod eggs. Yeah, he just thought that other dinosaurs ate the eggs of all of the other dinosaurs, and it just went out of control.
Yeah, dinosaurs must have had weird dinner parties. Imagine they didn't end well.
Early in the 20th century, a scientist, Nopska von Filioservilis, a Hungarian-born aristocrat and a spy, was one of the most peculiar characters in the field of paleontology.
With a name like that, I can't see why.
He suggested that a shortage of food, a low power of resistance, and even diminished sex drive contributed to the demise of the dinosaurs. His favorite theory, though, was death by overactive glands. He believed that dinosaurs grew to their tremendous size thanks to secretions from their pituitary gland. Eventually, he argued that the gland drove to the growth of dinosaurs to such excess that animals became pathologically huge and grotesque. Yeah. So they got giant because of pituitary problems. And I don't know why that killed them, but
they're probably really psychic, too, because, pituitary.
During the early 90s, many paleontologists believed that dinosaurs possessed a kind of evolutionary inertia that caused them to keep getting bigger and weirder. Some researchers proposed that dinosaurs were dumb compared to mammals because they invested too much of their internal energies into growing huge and fierce. Doesn't explain why they died out, though.
Well, it does explain why most of my friends that are really big are dumb.
Oh, come on, man. We have one really big friend that, yeah.
Oh, he's not dumb. He's lovable.
He's probably not listening to this anyway.
Fair enough.
Sorry if you are, Stephen.
We'll find out the next time I get together with him.
I'm taking up for you. He's our Bigfoot friend, too.
He's our Bigfoot.
Every time we think of Bigfoot, we think of Stephen. Big Stephen. Let's see. I'm gonna skip some of these. Here's a good one. So in 1982, L.R. Croft suggested that bad eyesight undid the dinosaurs. Since exposure to heat can make cataracts form more quickly, Croft surmised that dinosaurs with weird horns or crests developed these bizarre ornaments to shield their eyes from the relentless Mesozoic sun. In a world warmed by harsh sunlight, though, Croft expected that even these attempts to shade dinosaur eyes failed and that the creatures started to go blind before they hit sexual maturity.
And they couldn't find a mate.
Yeah, guess not.
I can't see where to put this thing.
Yeah, here's one, supernova, which, that's been proposed in some of the other extinction events. My favorite one, though, is aliens. So there is an idea that aliens wiped out the dinosaurs, that they actually guided the asteroid into the Earth and destroyed all the dinosaurs in order to make room for us. So they'd have like a clean slate to start life anew. That's a theory out there.
That's your favorite one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know that would be my favorite one. If we're going to go extraordinary, my favorite one would be that the mound people that live underneath the earth, they wanted to build out a little bit.
Solarians.
The Solarians.
Yeah.
They wanted to build out a little bit, and they needed more room, so they pushed the land out a little bit more using their volcano engines.
Oh.
And it's just the exhaust from the volcano engines.
They pushed some more of the matter out.
Yeah.
I got you. And they needed to add an addition, like to build a garage or something.
Yeah.
I got you.
A bunch of girl Solarians were saying, we need an extra room. We're going to have, another little Solarian baby.
Getting ready to hatch.
Once you stop eating the eggs, Doug. Stop eating the eggs.
Doug, stop eating the baby's eggs.
You put on 20 pounds this week.
All right, man. Well, I think that's all I've got from Mass Extinctions. Listeners, I hope you enjoyed this episode tonight as much as we enjoyed making it. And we really appreciate you tuning in each and every week to the show. You are why we are doing this.
And because it's fun.
But it's a lot more fun that we know we got people listening to us.
Definitely.
All right.
Yep.
So, Jimmy, got anything else on Mass Extinction?
Nope. I'm ready to call it a night.
All right, then. Well, with all that being said, this is Stephen Hawk signing out. And we'll see you next week.
Jimmy Co, keep your eyes to the skies and your feet on the ground. I will catch you next week.
Doug, put that egg down.
But it's so good. I love it.
Stop eating the baby's eggs.
It's the neighbors.
Oh, my goodness.
Big Doug.
All right, man. I'm out.
Ditto. That's all for this week's episode of Cosmic Sponge. Please don't forget to rate and review us wherever you listen. It helps others find the show. If you have any questions or have a story you'd like to share, you can contact us using our email account at firstcontact@cosmicsponge.com. If you'd like to support the show, consider becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/cosmicsponge, where you get access to exclusive content, including our Weird Wonders news and stories released every week. To explore everything Cosmic Sponge has to offer, including other ways to support the show, head on over to our website at www.cosmicsponge.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week.